So tonight I'll read, the subject of my readings will be on the contemplation of elements. And so I chose the Dr. Vibhanga Sutta as Majjhima Nikaya 140. I won't read the entire sutta. I'll read the introduction to the sutta and then just read the way the Buddha recommends the Bhikkhu Pukusati to contemplate the elements. I like this one because it will give you the general idea of the formula of the elements, but he guides Pukusati through the contemplation. And then I'll read a it's sort of like a guided meditation / contemplation on the elements by Ajahn Sucitto. So I thought it'd be beneficial to get the scriptural formula and then see Ajahn Sucitto's take on the element contemplation. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was wandering in the Magadhan country and eventually arrived at Rajagaha. There he went to the potter Bhagawa and said to him, "If it is not inconvenient for you, Bhagawa, I will stay one night in your workshop." "It is not inconvenient for me, Venerable Sir, but there is a homeless one already staying there. If he agrees, then stay as long as you like, Venerable Sir." Now there was a clansman named Pukusati who had gone forth from the home life into homelessness out of faith in the Blessed One. And on that occasion he was already staying in the potter's workshop. Then the Blessed One went to the Venerable Pukusati and said to him, "If it is not inconvenient for you, Bhikkhu, I will stay one night in the workshop." "The potter's workshop is large enough, friend. Let the Venerable One stay as long as he likes." Then the Blessed One entered the potter's workshop, prepared a spread of grass at one end, and sat down, holding his legs crosswise, setting his body erect, and establishing mindfulness in front of him. Then the Blessed One spent most of the night seated in meditation, and the Venerable Pukusati also spent most of the night seated in meditation. Then the Blessed One thought, "This clansman conducts himself in a way that inspires confidence. Suppose I were to question him." So he asked the Venerable Pukusati, "Under whom have you gone forth, Bhikkhu? Who's your teacher? Whose Dhamma do you profess?" "Friend, there is the recluse Gotama, the son of the Sakyans, who went forth from a Sakyan clan. Now, a good report of that blessed Gotama has been spread to this effect. That Blessed One is accomplished, fully enlightened, perfect in true knowledge and conduct, sublime, knower of the worlds, incomparable leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. I've gone forth under that Blessed One. That Blessed One is my teacher. I profess the Dhamma of that Blessed One." "But Bhikkhu, where is that Blessed One, accomplished and fully enlightened, now living?" "There is, friend, a city in the northern country named Savatthi. The Blessed One, accomplished and fully enlightened, is now living there." "But, Bhikkhu, have you ever seen that Blessed One before? Would you recognize him if you saw him?" "No, friend, I've never seen that Blessed One before, nor would I recognize him if I saw him." Then the Blessed One thought, "This clansman has gone forth from the home life into homelessness under me. Suppose I were to teach him the Dhamma." So the Blessed One addressed the Venerable Pukusati thus, "Bhikkhu, I will teach you the Dhamma. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say." "Yes, friend," the Venerable Pukusati replied. The Blessed One said this, and so I'll skip to just the elements. "Bhikkhu, this person consists of 6 elements. So it was said, and with reference to what was this said? There are the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the air element, the space element, and the consciousness element. So it was with reference to this that it was said, Bhikkhu, this person consists of 6 elements. One should not neglect wisdom. One should preserve truth, should cultivate relinquishment, and should train for peace. So it was said, and with reference to what was this said? How, Bhikkhu, does one not neglect wisdom? There are these 6 elements, earth element, the water element, the fire element, the air element, the space element, and the consciousness element. What, Bhikkhu, is the earth element? The earth element may be either internal or external. What is the internal earth element? Whatever internally, belonging to oneself, is solid, solidified, and clung to, that is, head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, intestines, mesentery, contents of the stomach, feces, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is solid, solidified, and clung to. This is called the internal earth element. Now, both the internal earth element and the external earth element are simply earth element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. When one sees it thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the earth element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the earth element. What bhikkhu is the water element? The water element may be either internal or external. What is the internal water element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is water, watery, and clung to. That is, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, spittle, snot, oil of the joints, urine, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is water, watery, and clung to. This is called the internal water element. Now, both the internal water element and the external water element are simply water element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. When one sees it thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the water element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the water element. What bhikkhu is the fire element? The fire element may be either internal or external. What is the internal fire element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is fire, fiery, and clung to. That is, that by which one is warmed, ages, and is consumed. That by which what is eaten, drunk, consumed, and tasted gets completely digested. Or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is fire, fiery, and clung to. This is called the internal fire element. Now, both the internal fire element and the external fire element are simply fire element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. When one sees it thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the fire element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the fire element. What bhikkhu is the air element? The air element may be either internal or external. What is the internal air element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is air, airy, and clung to. That is, upgoing winds, downgoing winds, winds in the belly, winds in the bowels, winds that course through the limbs, in-breath and out-breath, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is air, airy, and clung to. This is called the internal air element. Now, both the internal air element and the external air element are simply air element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. When one sees it thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the air element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the air element. What bhikkhu is the space element? The space element may be either internal or external. What is the internal space element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is space, spatial, and clung to. That is, the holes of the ears, the nostrils, the door of the mouth, and that aperture whereby what is eaten, drunk, consumed, and tasted gets swallowed, and where it collects, and whereby it is excreted from below, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is space, spatial, and clung to. This is called the internal space element. Now, both the internal space element and the external space element are simply space element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. When one sees it thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the space element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the space element. Then there remains only consciousness, purified and bright. What does one cognize with that consciousness? One cognizes, this is pleasant. One cognizes, this is painful. One cognizes, this is neither painful nor pleasant. In dependence on a contact to be felt as pleasant, there arises a pleasant feeling. When one feels a pleasant feeling, one understands, I feel a pleasant feeling. One understands, with the cessation of that same contact to be felt as pleasant, its corresponding feeling, the pleasant feeling that arose independent on that contact to be felt as pleasant, ceases and subsides. And then he goes through all the feelings. And that's the end of the formula essentially for the elements. And then once Pugusati works through this contemplation, then the Buddha says, then there remains only equanimity, purified and bright, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. Suppose, Bhikkhu, a skilled goldsmith or his apprentice were to prepare a furnace, heat up the crucible, take some gold with tongs, and put it into the crucible. From time to time he would blow on it. From time to time he would sprinkle water over it, and from time to time he would just look on. That gold would become refined, well refined, completely refined, faultless, rid of dross, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. Then whatever kind of ornament he wished to make from it, whether a golden chain or earrings or a necklace or a golden garland, it would serve his purpose. So too, Bhikkhu, then there remains only equanimity, purified and bright, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. So then I'll read Ajahn Sucitto's take on the element contemplation, or just one version of how he likes to do it. Breathing through the four elements. This guided meditation was offered on the 25th of November, 2014. To contemplate the four elements, first get an overall impression of your body. Don't focus on any particular detail, but simply spread out into the whole experience of how you know you have a body, that kind of substantiality, that sense of an extended living mass. The element that's most clearly associated with breathing is air. You can feel that repeated flowing movement, which we call breathing. It doesn't really matter where you feel it. Simply notice where it's most thoroughly and easily felt. Feel the completeness of each breath, through the flow of the exhaling to the end of it, through the flow of the inhaling to the end of it. Be aware of that flow of air within the domain of the body, which is perhaps more akin to earth. It's relatively solid. This flow of air pushes, massages, opens, and spreads the experience of body. At the end of the out-breath, you may notice that things seem to solidify for a moment and come into stasis. The earth element becomes more dominant, then it changes and loosens. That flow, that movement, is not really a thing, is it? You can call it a thing, like call the wind a thing, but it's actually not a finite thing. It's a process, a movement through the earth. Give your awareness over to these two aspects of rupa playing together, balancing. The air predominates, then the earth, then it changes back into air again. Stasis, movement, stasis, movement. You can trust this. This is where you are. And you can, of course, adjust the focus and notice the same pattern in your chest, your throat, your head, or your abdomen. You might also notice a kind of vitality or energy. Sometimes your breath has a low vitality. At other times, particularly at the end of the breath, it feels strong and clear. It has energy within it. At the completion of the inhalation, energy builds up. At the completion of the exhalation, energy gathers to draw a breath in again. This is the fire element. It has a warming and vitalizing effect. You can look out for that quality in any part of your body. Vitality will be there. If you focus on it, it will even increase, and there will be a certain shining quality, particularly in the head. It's a very important element. It can soften, it can heal. When you sense the body, feel the vitalizing effect of breathing. If you take it in your chest for example, you can have the sense of it spreading a little bit as you breathe in. The breathing comes in, and perhaps your chest becomes a little more charged. Then, when breathing out, it becomes cooled. You're feeling the vitality of that. Perhaps you can encourage some of the tissues to soften, to release, to let go a little more. Just like you're massaging something. You can pick up this sign by bearing in mind your throat, your shoulders, your head, or any other part of the body and sensing breathing. The part of the body you're bearing in mind doesn't have to be necessarily associated with respiratory tract, because the energy moves wherever you bring attention to. The water element is the property that allows experiences to resonate, ripple, and travel through the entire form. Here, we might imagine the sense of the body being like a pool. All these different effects occur in it: tensions, swirls, still places, and so on. Instead of cutting off or rigidifying around difficult places, we breathe into them, feeling the energy of the breathing traveling through the entire form. You can ask the body to loosen a little bit in its tension, to soften, to widen. You're breathing, sensitive to the entire body, and whatever intention of goodwill that you want to bear in mind, you carry it through the body. Notice its effects. This is the beauty of the water element. If you can pick up these elements and get a sense of how they blend, you have a quality of balance, the earth, the firmness, without getting seized up and rigid, air, the movement of breathing, without getting blown away and spun out. It's contained. The vitality of fire, warming, and the suffusiveness of water. If there is too much water, you lose form. If there's not enough of it, you become rigid. These elements are all blending together with breathing in and breathing out. Your bodily experience can become the play of these elements in harmony. And that's the end of my reading. It was a little short, but you'll have time to ask Luang Por some questions about your practice.
I'm just curious if anyone would be willing to share anything about your practice with the elements, whether that's how you practice with it. Do you sometimes focus on one? Just any additional practice experience that you might want to share? Thank you.
Well, I mean, I've used the elements practice from time to time, and what I've always found is it's one of the very direct methods for the contemplation of not self, and that's very settling or very soothing, very grounding. So that going through the body, as both the sutta and Ajahn Sucitto talked about, but really looking at the body in terms of elements rather than this is me, this is mine, or this is big, this is small, this is light, this is heavy. It's just these are elements, and really going through the fundamental nature of what we call me and mine, and really see this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself, and that I mean, I've always found the elements as an important way of accessing that very directly. Another way that it has been helpful for me is also contemplating especially when you're sitting up in the forest, quiet. We're just, what we call me and mine is this absolute conceit of me as a separate being and not being a part of the nature around me, and everything that we're surrounded by is just these fundamental elements. And whether we're sitting meditation or walking meditation, particularly walking meditation, I found very, very helpful for that contemplation and then that dissolving of self and other, the internal, external, that we easily, the feeling is, what's more important than me, but the more we contemplate, and especially in terms of elements, and it's a construction that we prop up, and it's painful to prop up, so that it's a great sort of doorway into relinquishment.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody else has a...
just in a similar way, maybe, and kind of using some of the ways that Ajahn Sucitto describes other contemplations that maybe aren't so specific to using the words, the elements, but a lot of the way he phrases some of his contemplations take into account the whole experience of the elements, like his basic 3 go-to contemplations as he's sometimes teaching the beginning parts of settling down for meditation, of tuning into the qualities of ground, space, and rhythm. And I use that periodically when I'm starting my period of meditation, and grounding, of course, being the experiencing of the quality of the earth element, the solidity, the density, the quality of gravity, in a sense, bringing yourself into the presence of embodiment, being in the body. But on a real experiential level, I think is earth element experience. And then similar with space, the space element, finding that which is light and open and easy to be with, relaxed. Not only the orifices that the Buddha described in his in that first sutta, but also just that the quality of relaxation, openness, release, say of the muscles of the face, that kind of thing. I think of as space element, and then the rhythm, tuning. Once those are established, tuning into the rhythm of the breathing, the quality of rhythm, and I guess you could say it's sort of maybe a combination of air element and water element. The flow, the movement being the water element, and the movement of energy and air, but all in context of rhythm. So ground, space, rhythm is kind of an element contemplation. And then, as Luang Por was mentioning, the walking path is really a great place to tune into those same qualities, the qualities of density, the body moving, the contact with the ground, the experience of skeleton and flesh, the dense parts moving through space, and then the quality of movement itself being the flow, the water element again. So not necessarily conceptualizing it for myself too much or using those words, but tuning into that kind of elemental experience of density and movement and flow and space.
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I was wondering what you guys do during your formal meditation practice, or like what's your practice like right now? Just curious.
It really depends, but I'm in because that's because still really my foundation is mindfulness of breathing, and but that covers just about anything really. So and it gets very very quiet and still, which is but then it's also, if there is any kind of aches and pains or restlessness, and it's just really coming into the body and using the breath to relax, or using space, or using stillness, and the contemplation of the elements, just like that, this not self, and this, because you're always sort of looking. You're not just sort of trying to make the mind calm and peaceful, which you are, but that's not the goal. The goal is always around what is it that helps me disentangle the mind from its objects, disentangle the mind from its delusions, disentangle the mind from the impulses that might come up, and so that moving to relinquishment and release.
Well, I kind of already described a lot of my practice just in what I just said about the ground, space, rhythm, all those kinds of things. And that's, as I described it then, that's largely a samatha kind of practice, calming, settling, soothing, brings the mind to a sense of ease and contentment. And then just exactly the same as what Luang does, since he's my teacher. But then when the mind is settled, and even when it's, even just say walking down from my kuti or walking through the forest, just bringing up the recollection of, for me, I tend to, in terms of the three characteristics, I tend to go more frequently to a kind of a direct contemplation of not self, anatta. And sometimes just by reciting after the mind, while the mind is settled with some of what I was just talking about before, that just repeating, drawing my attention to the experience of the body, and basically just repeating that phrase from the Satipatthana in the quote unquote refrain, there is a body, pointing to that aspect, just merely enough for mindfulness and knowing, just to that extent, there is a body. And that kind of helps draw up the perception of not self. So just walking, like, oh, okay, body walking. Or sometimes if the mental activity is pretty active, lots of thinking, or even just a minimal amount of thinking going on, just the same formula. It's not in the Satipatthana per se, but just saying there is thinking, there are thoughts. And then notice when they stop, noticing the absence. And then just kind of making that a contemplation, walking on the walking path, walking down from my kuti, sitting. So with the samatha development, then just constantly over and over again, bringing those up for reflection, experiencing those qualities.
With regard to walking meditation, I find that when I'm doing walking meditation, it seems more conducive to those kind of contemplations and less conducive to a lot of settling. And in the Sutta, the 5 benefits of walking meditation, and one of them is samadhi attained in walking meditation lasts a long time. And that's always kind of made me think, because there's not a lot of samadhi going for me on the walking meditation path. I wondered, is that just a me? Is that gonna change?
No, you're relegated to forever. This is a permanent condition. Yeah. No, I think one of the things that with walking meditation, it is more conducive to, because the body is physically moving, so there is a tendency for the mind to move as well. But it's that it's a very good balance to the mind. When you sit and gets very still, then there can be a tendency to dullness, or if not dullness, then to just being very content with the stillness, and not really bringing up the reflections and contemplations and examination, which is actually really an important part of the practice over the long term. And so being able to using the walking meditation, it's quite naturally there is, because you're physically moving, then there's more of a tendency for the mind to move. but then to be moving it in the direction of reflection, investigation of dhammas, contemplation of one's experience, and contemplation of the elements. I mean, whatever comes up. So it's a and what happens with walking meditation, that if one does get into a really good rhythm of walking meditation, then there is a settling that is really stable and steady, and it may not be the same quality as when you're sitting, but there's a steadiness and stability and clarity that's really important. And then that also translates back into because you're not isolating just sitting or just walking. This is ongoing practice of training the mind, and it's a really important support for the whole trajectory of training.
Just to dovetail onto that, to add on to that, that it's a kind of a classic example of the insight that you might develop through more active contemplation, walking, say the insight around not self or changeability or whatever. It's a kind of it feeds back onto the settling of the mind, the development of the more calming aspects. Or it's like the classic example of Luang Mahabua's teaching about wisdom develops samadhi, so that the more the mind is attuned and realizing, this isn't who I am, this is all changeability, just through the experience of contemplation, say on the walking path, then that in itself, just as Luang Por was saying, is something that really helps the mind collect, compose, gather, which to me is the best translation of samadhi rather than concentration. It's not that kind of experience, but more of that pulling together, settling, being quite satisfied, quite content.
Bor, I believe you mentioned that Anapanasati covers almost everything. Could you expand on it?
How many days do we have?
18.
No, because the Anapanasati is it is how do you say, as in the Anapanasati Sutta, that the development of Anapanasati brings to fruition the four foundations of mindfulness. Four foundations of mindfulness bring to fruition the seven factors of awakening. So then the mindfulness of breathing is rooted in the mindfulness of body. And so then that covers a whole range of experience. Mindfulness of feeling. And so that's another, mental experience that it covers experience of mind itself. So starting to understand and use mindfulness of breathing to highlight the experience of the mind and its moods and its content, and then the contemplation of dhammas is a contemplation of experience, and particularly the experiences that are either obstacles, five hindrances, or that are just fundamental experience of being a human being, five aggregates, six sense bases, or things that are in terms of conducive to liberation and freedom, seven factors of awakening, four noble truths. Those are so that it really does cover everything. It's like especially when you even if it just dovetailing into the four noble truths. I mean, that in itself sort of covers everything.